Commander Vexral walked into the large classroom. His 4 eyes looked at all the young soldiers sitting in rows. They came from many different planets and species. All of them wanted to become great warriors. The commander had many scars on his body from 30 years of fighting. His hands shook a little when he moved them. "Today we will talk about humans," Vexral said. His voice came out through a machine that changed his sounds into words everyone could understand. "I see some of you are smiling. You have heard stories about them. They joined our alliance only 40 years ago. They said they wanted peace and trade." He pressed a button and a picture appeared in the air. It showed a beautiful blue and green planet spinning slowly. "This is Earth. It is their homeworld. The planet has lots of water and good weather. Humans were hunters long ago. They were not the fastest animals. They were not the strongest. But they could run after their food for many hours until it got too tired. Remember this fact. It will help you understand them later." A student raised one of its arms. It was a Graxian with many tentacles. "Sir, why does it matter how they hunted long ago? We use modern weapons now." Vexral made a clicking sound with his mouth. "Because war is not just about weapons and ships. War is about the mind. It is about who can keep fighting when others would give up. Humans have fought wars against each other for 10,000 years. They only stopped fighting for short times. Then they started again." The room became very quiet. "Let me tell you about the first time I met humans in battle. I was a young officer on a big coalition ship called Infinite Dawn. We got a call for help from a mining colony on a planet called Threshold 7. Bad aliens called the Kresh had attacked it. The Kresh are very mean. They kill everyone and burn everything. They never let anyone live." Vexral showed pictures and numbers on the screens. "We arrived 12 hours after the attack started. Our rules said we should look at the situation first, then call for more ships, then make a safe area. But there were human guards at Threshold 715. Human guards were protecting 3,000. People from different species." He stopped talking and his breathing made a strange sound like wind in a cave. "When we got there, 13 of the 15 humans were dead. The Kresh had sent 300 warriors. Our computer said the colony was lost. We got ready to save anyone still alive if we could find them." The picture changed to show video from a helmet camera. A human man was there. His armor was broken and air was leaking out. His face could be seen through the cracked glass. Blood covered half of his face. Human blood is red because it has lots of oxygen in it. "This is Corporal Tay. He was one of 2 humans still alive. We found him in the main power building. He was surrounded by 47 dead Kresh bodies. He had been fighting for 11 hours without stopping." The video showed the human falling down. He hit a wall. Then he stood up again. His gun was broken. He was fighting with a piece of metal pipe. He did not know we had arrived. He thought he was still alone, and he was laughing. Some students moved in their seats. They looked uncomfortable. Our doctor looked at him later. The doctor was made of living crystal. The doctor said Tay had 3 broken ribs. 1 lung had a hole in it. He had lost a lot of blood. His left arm bone was broken and sticking out. His head was badly hurt. He should have fallen unconscious. He should have died twice. When our doctor asked how he kept fighting, do you know what he said? Vexral leaned forward. His voice got quieter. He said, "I was angry, that was everything. Just angry, as if being angry was enough to keep a dying body alive and fighting when it should be impossible." The commander changed the picture to show another human. This one was a woman. Her armor was also badly damaged. "This is Private Minji. She was the other survivor. We found her in the safe rooms where the civilians were hiding. She was standing over 18 dead Kresh bodies. She had held one hallway for 9 hours. The Kresh could not get past her because she refused to move back or die. She ran out of bullets after the first hour. Then she fought with a tool used to fix things." He made the picture bigger to show the tool more clearly. It was a simple cutting tool that used hot plasma. She changed the tool while fighting. She made it more powerful. It was 60% stronger than it should be. It should have exploded in her hands. I asked her why she risked that. She looked at me with eyes that had no fear in them. Her eyes were cold and full of thinking. She said better to die trying than to let them through. Vexral turned off the pictures and looked at the students. The humans held that colony. 15 against 300. 13 died. But they killed or hurt more than 200 Kresh. They gave the civilians enough time to make their hiding place stronger. When we took Tay and Minji away, they did not ask for medical help first. They asked if the civilians were safe. Nobody spoke for a long time. That was my first time seeing how humans fight. I thought it was special. I thought it was rare. Over the next 30 years, I learned it was not special at all. It was just normal for humans. He showed a map of many star systems. Lots of them were marked in red. Over the next 4 classes, I will tell you stories that still give me bad dreams at night. Stories about how humans fight, how strong they are, and how they think during war. I tell you these stories not just to scare you, though they should scare you. I tell you so that if you ever fight next to humans, you will understand them. And if you ever have to fight against humans, Vexral made fast clicking sounds with his mouth. It was a sound that showed he was scared. Then I hope the universe is kind to you, because the humans will not be kind. The commander told the class they could leave, but as the students walked out, he noticed they were much quieter than before. Their confidence was gone. Instead, they had something else, something that looked like they were starting to understand, or maybe it was just fear. Vexral sat down in his chair. His hands were still shaking. Even after all these years, thinking about humans in battle made him shake. They were the strangest species he had ever met. They could be so kind and peaceful. But when they fought, they became something else. Something that refused to accept defeat no matter what the cost was. He looked at the empty classroom. Tomorrow he would tell them another story. The story of what happened at Broken Hope Station. That story still gave him nightmares. A human captain and 30 people against 5,000 enemy warriors. The students thought today's lesson was scary. They had no idea what was coming next. Vexral closed his eyes and tried not to remember. But the memories came anyway. They always did. The humans had changed warfare forever. They had shown the galaxy that sometimes will and determination mattered more than weapons and numbers, and that was the most frightening lesson of all. Commander Vexral walked into the classroom again. He saw that his students had changed since the last class. They were not acting proud and confident anymore. Now they sat up straight and paid attention. They looked more serious. This was good. It meant they were learning. Today I will tell you about the siege of Broken Hope Station. This happened 17 years ago. It was during the war with the Vrex in the Cantus area of space. Some of you do not know about the Vrex. They are a species that shares one big mind. They all think together. They do not feel fear. Their spirits do not break. They do not run away unless their queen mind tells them to. A picture appeared in the air. It showed a small space station going around a giant gas planet. Broken Hope was one of our listening stations. We used it to watch Vrex ship movements. 200 people worked there. Most were scientists and computer experts. Only 30 were security guards. When the Vrex found the station, they sent 5,000 warriors to destroy it. The same Graxian student from before raised a tentacle. Sir, why did we not take everyone off the station? Good question, we tried. But the Vrex stopped all our long-distance communications. They also put mines around where ships could dock. Our rescue ships were 3 days away. The station commander calculated they had maybe 6 hours before the Vrex broke through the outside walls. Vexral changed the picture to show part of the station from inside. The station commander was a human named Captain Hyun. He had served in Earth's military for 20 years before joining us. His record was normal. He was good at his job and professional, but nothing showed he was special. The Vrex thought they would win easily through large numbers. They had done this many times before. The picture changed to show data and numbers moving fast across the screen. Captain Hyun made a choice that broke all our military rules. Instead of protecting the command center and trying to wait for rescue, he ordered all the non-fighting people to go into the station's core vault. That was 170 people. Then he locked them inside with enough food and water for 4 days. Some students looked confused. That left only 30 people to defend the station, 30 against 5,000. Our computer said they had almost no chance to survive. It calculated 0.03% chance. Captain Hyun turned off the computer. Then he talked to his remaining crew. Vexral played a sound recording. A machine changed the human voice into words they could all understand. I will not lie to you. We are probably going to die here. But we are going to make the Vrex pay for every hallway, every door, every room. We are going to turn this station into a grave. And if we do our jobs right, it will be their grave as much as ours. Humans have an old saying, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. Today we are all family, and we are going to show these bugs why you should not trap desperate humans. The commander let the words hang in the air. The Vrex broke through the outer wall 47 minutes later. Captain Hyun had prepared a special defense. It was not a straight line of guards. Instead, it was a moving strategy of surprise attacks, running away and slowly wearing them down. He split his 30 defenders into 6 teams of 5 people each. Each team knew the station layout perfectly, and each team had orders that seemed crazy at first. Vexerol showed drawings of the inside of the station. Team 1 was led by Lieutenant Daeho. He was an explosives expert. His orders were to make parts of the station collapse behind the Vrex as they moved forward. This forced them to go where he wanted them to go. Team 2 was under Sergeant Bora. They set traps. They made bombs from reactor coolant and mining explosives. Team 3 was led by Corporal G1. They moved through the air vents. They would come out to attack, then disappear before the Vrex could fight back. The picture showed camera videos from inside the station. The images were not clear but showed humans moving through smoke and darkness. The Vrex expected a normal defense. Instead, they got chaos. Walls exploded. Hallways opened to space. Fire safety systems were changed to spray fuel that burns. Then the humans set it on fire. The station itself became a weapon. A young student spoke up. "But sir, the Vrex are smart. They learn and adapt. Did they not change their tactics?" "They tried," Vexrel agreed. "But here is where human thinking becomes terrifying. The Vrex work through logical agreement. Their queen mind controls all their actions for best results. Humans work through what they call initiative. Each team made their own decisions. They adapted to what was happening. They did things that no central command would ever allow." He made the camera picture bigger. It showed a human named Sergeant Bora actually running through fire to set off an explosive. The explosion made an entire deck collapse onto Vrex warriors below. The Vrex could not predict what humans would do. This was because humans themselves did not know what they would do until they did it. Sergeant Bora's action was not in the plan. She saw a chance and took it, even though it meant bad burns across 40% of her body. She lived barely and kept fighting for 2 more hours. The picture changed to show time and tactical data moving fast. After 12 hours, the Vrex had only gotten through 40% of the station. They had lost 800 warriors. Captain Hyun's force was down to 18 people. All of them were hurt. Normal military rules said they should surrender to save lives. The Vrex sent a message offering terms. Vexrel played another sound recording. The human captain's voice sounded rough now and strained. "Here is my answer. Choke on your own shells. Humanity has a long memory. We do not forget the day we surrendered. Today is not that day." The Vrex attacked again. By hour 18, only 8 humans could still fight. Captain Hyun was one of them. They had moved back to the station's central hub. This was a round room with doors from every direction. The tactical situation was hopeless. The commander stopped talking. His breathing holes flared with upset feelings. This is where the story becomes truly important to understand. Captain Hyun gathered his remaining people. He told them about a battle from Earth's history. It was called the Battle of Thermopylae. 300 warriors held a narrow pass against an army of thousands. He said they had already done better than those ancient warriors. He said they should be proud. Then he turned on the station's self-destruct system. The room exploded with shocked sounds. Vexrel raised one arm for quiet. The self-destruct had a 15-minute countdown. It could not be stopped once started. Captain Hyun sent a message to the Vrex Queen Mind. He said, "You wanted this station? You can have it, but you are coming with us." Then he ordered his remaining people to make one final stand. Not to survive, but to keep the Vrex inside the station until the reactor exploded. The picture showed heat readings. The reactor was starting to fail in a controlled way. 8 humans held off 5,000 Vrex for 15 minutes. When our rescue ships arrived 3 hours later, they found debris and radiation. The station was gone. 4,200 Vrex had been on board when it exploded. None of them survived. Vexrel turned off the picture. But remember the 170 people Captain Hyun locked in the core vault? That vault was designed to survive if the station was destroyed. When we recovered it, all 170 were alive. The captain had sacrificed himself and his security force to save them. He turned his own station into a final weapon. A long silence filled the room. The Vrex Queen Mind sent an official message to our command after this happened. It said, "We have studied the humans' tactical behavior. We find it does not work with survival-based decision-making. They should not have been able to resist. We officially request that human personnel not be assigned to contested territories. Their presence creates unacceptable mental stress on our collective. Several students made sounds of disbelief. Yes, Vexrel confirmed. The Vrex had conquered 40 star systems through constant aggression, but they asked us to not make them fight humans, because humans do not calculate odds. They do not surrender when logic says they should. They turn every defeat into a costly victory for their enemies. He looked at all the students. Captain Hyun was given our highest honor after his death. At the ceremony, a human admiral said something I never forgot. He said Hyun did not die buying time. He died selling it. And the price he charged was catastrophic. Vexrel told the class they could leave. As they walked out, he noticed many of them looking at the human students in the academy with new eyes. Not quite fear, but something close to respect mixed with concern. The commander understood. He felt the same way even now. Humans were not just warriors. They were something more dangerous. They were warriors who refused to lose even when losing meant they would die. Commander Vexrel waited for his students to sit down and become quiet before starting the third lesson. He noticed several of them had been reading about human military history in the Academy's computer system. This was good. Taking initiative was the mark of a real warrior. Today we will talk about a different side of human warfare, he began. The last two stories were about desperate last stands and overwhelming aggression. Today I will tell you about patience, and why a patient human is the most dangerous hunter in the galaxy. A picture appeared showing a jungle world covered in thick plants and constant rain. This is Verdant 9. It was a contested border world during the Kurlax Rebellion. The Kurlax are ambush experts. They evolved for jungle warfare. Their skin can change colors like a chameleon for natural camouflage. They have special sense organs that detect heat, movement, and electromagnetic signals. By any measure, they are better jungle fighters than any species in the coalition. Vexrel made the picture focus on one area of dense forest. A Kurlax warlord named Thresh had built a command bunker deep in the jungle. From this position, he coordinated raids that killed thousands of our people. The bunker was protected by 200 elite Kurlax warriors, sensor grids, automated defenses, and miles of hostile terrain. We authorized 3 assault missions. All 3 failed with heavy casualties. He showed casualty reports with numbers scrolling past in red. Then our intelligence service got information about a high-level Kurlax strategy meeting at the bunker. Every major warlord would be there. This was a chance to cut off their entire leadership in one strike. But after 3 failed assaults, normal tactics were clearly not enough. The picture changed to show a file about a person, a human male with an ordinary face and calm eyes. Corporal Junho, Coalition Special Operations. Age 34. He specialized in long-range reconnaissance and target elimination. Before joining us, he served in a unit on Earth called the ROK Marine Corps Special Operations Group. His superiors described him as unsettling and impossibly patient. Vexrel changed the picture to show a mission brief. Junho volunteered for what we classified as a suicide mission. He would infiltrate to the bunker alone. He would confirm the warlords were present. Then he would either eliminate them or mark the target for an orbital strike. We calculated his survival probability at 4%. A student raised a crystal appendage. Sir, why send only one person? Surely a team would have better chances. An excellent question that shows your lack of experience, Vexrel replied without being mean. The Kurlax sensor grids were designed to detect team movements, communication signals, and coordinated action. One person moving slowly and generating minimal electromagnetic signals had a better chance of avoiding detection than a team. And if that one person was caught, we would lose only one operative instead of a full squad. He focused on the jungle terrain. Yunho was dropped from high altitude 40 kilometers from the target. He carried minimal equipment, a rifle with 24 rounds, a knife, water purification tablets, and a beacon, no armor, no communication equipment, no food. Everything else he needed he would acquire or make himself. The picture began showing a timeline. The journey to the bunker took Junho 11 days. Not because the distance was great, but because he moved an average of 100 meters per hour. Let me repeat that. 100 meters per hour. He would advance, stop, observe for up to 30 minutes, then advance again. Sometimes he stayed completely still for hours if Kurlax patrols were near. Vexrel showed thermal images from our surveillance satellites. Our satellites tracked him for the first 3 days. Then we lost him. He had learned to hide his heat signature using mud and plants. He became effectively invisible to our sensors, and more importantly to Kurlak's sensors. The commander's mouth parts clicked thoughtfully. On day 5, Junho encountered a Kurlak's patrol. 6 warriors heavily armed moving through his position. We assumed he was caught. We prepared to cancel the mission. 23 hours later, the satellite detected his heat signature again. He had buried himself under 2 meters of mud. He breathed through a hollow reed while the patrol passed within 3 meters of his position. Several students made sounds of disbelief. A human's mind allows for this kind of patience. They evolved as persistence hunters, remember? They can enter a mental state that lets them remain almost motionless for long periods. Their body processes slow down. Their minds focus on a single objective. Other species would feel panic, boredom, or the overwhelming need to move. Humans simply wait. The picture showed more timeline data. By day 9, Junho had penetrated the outer security perimeter. Here is where his approach became truly alien. Instead of trying to bypass the sensor grids, he studied them for 48 hours. He learned their patterns. He found the tiny gaps in coverage caused by jungle growth and weather interference. Vexerol focused on technical readouts. He then spent another 12 hours moving through a gap no wider than 60 centimeters. Sometimes taking an hour to advance a single meter. He made sure he never triggered motion sensors or broke laser grids. If he had been detected at any point, 200 warriors would have converged on his position in minutes. On day 11, he reached a position 300 meters from the bunker entrance. And then he stopped. Completely for 37 hours. The commander let that information sink in. 37 hours in the same position. Barely moving. Barely breathing. Simply observing. He watched guard rotations. He studied wind patterns. He calculated angles and trajectories. And then on the morning of day 13, when the high-level meeting was scheduled to begin, he fired. The picture showed a diagram of bullet paths, 24 rounds, 24 kills, including Warlord Thresh and 5 other high-ranking commanders. Junho fired 1 shot every 45 seconds. He adjusted for wind, distance, and target movement. The Kurlaks did not locate his position until he had fired 11 times. By then he had created enough chaos that their return fire was not coordinated. Vexerol showed after-action reports. After using all his ammunition, Junho activated his beacon and began moving. Not away from the bunker, but parallel to it. He knew the Kurlaks would expect him to flee directly away. He moved 3 kilometers in an hour. Faster than his infiltration pace, but still methodical and controlled. Our strike teams extracted him 6 hours later. The commander turned to face his students directly. When our medical officer examined him after extraction, Junho had lost 14 kilograms from his starting weight. He had multiple infections from the mud burial. His hands trembled from prolonged stress. But when the officer asked him how he maintained composure during the 37-hour observation period, do you know what he said? Vexerol's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. He said, "I was watching ants. There was a colony near my position. Fascinating creatures, very organized. As if he had been on a nature observation tour rather than an assassination mission behind enemy lines." A long pause. This is the terrifying aspect of human patience. They can disconnect their emotional responses from their circumstances. They can find calm in chaos. They can wait when waiting is the hardest possible action to take. He showed a final image of Corporal Junho receiving a Coalition Medal of Valor. After this mission, Kurlak's doctrine was updated to include protocols for human hunter-stalkers. They now deploy twice as many sentries. They triple their sensor coverage. They regularly sweep areas with active sonar, regardless of the wildlife disruption it causes, all because one human taught them that patience is a weapon just as deadly as any gun. Vexerol turned off the picture. The Kurlak's rebellion ended within 6 months after the warlords' deaths. Some historians credit coalition military might. But those of us who were there know the truth. It ended because a single human was willing to lie in mud for a day, to endure infections, to watch ants while waiting for the perfect moment to pull a trigger. He looked at each student. Remember this. When fighting alongside humans, respect their aggression and their courage. But when fighting against them, fear their patience. Because somewhere in the darkness, in the mud, in the places where you think no one could possibly be watching, there might be a human, waiting, observing, learning your patterns. And when they finally act, it will be too late for you to respond. The class ended in thoughtful silence. Vexrel noticed several students glancing nervously at the shadows in the corners of the room. He understood. After hearing these stories, he still did the same thing. The thought of a human watching from concealment, waiting with infinite patience for the right moment, was more frightening than any direct assault. Because you could see an assault coming, but a patient human, you would never know they were there until it was already over. Commander Vexrel stood before his students for the fourth lesson. He noticed how they had changed. They sat straighter now. They were more focused. Fear and respect had replaced youthful pride. He approved of this change. Today I will tell you something that seems to contradict everything I have taught you so far. Today I will tell you why human mercy is the most terrifying weapon of all. Confused sounds rippled through the room. Vexrel raised one arm for silence. I know what you are thinking. The previous lessons taught you about human ferocity, about their refusal to surrender, about their patient lethality. How can mercy be terrifying? Listen and understand. A picture appeared showing a star system at the edge of Coalition space. This is the Helion system. It was the site of one of the most brutal conflicts in recent Coalition history. The system was invaded by the Carthax Empire. They are a militaristic civilization that practices what they call dominance hierarchy. They conquer species, then categorize them into castes: administrators, laborers, or livestock. Vexrel's mouth parts clicked with distaste. The Carthax occupied Helion 3, a colony world with 6 million inhabitants from various coalition species. They immediately began categorization. Anyone who resisted was executed publicly. Within 3 months, they had killed 800,000 people and enslaved the rest. We authorized a liberation force. The picture changed to show fleet compositions. The task force included elements from 7 coalition species. Among them was a human medical frigate commanded by Lieutenant Tsuji, age 29. She was formerly a trauma surgeon on Earth before joining our medical corps. Her ship was called Gentle Hands. It carried medical supplies and a staff of 65 medical personnel. Vexrel showed personnel files. Standard military doctrine places medical ships at the rear of any engagement. They are protected by combat vessels. Lieutenant Tsuji requested and received permission to accompany the initial assault wave. When her superiors questioned this decision, she stated that casualties would be highest in the first hours. Medical response time was critical. The picture showed the battle, coalition ships engaging Carthax orbital defenses. The assault went poorly. The Carthax had heavily fortified Helion 3's orbit. 3 coalition cruisers were destroyed in the opening engagement. The task force was forced to withdraw and regroup. All ships retreated except one. He focused on a single vessel moving toward the planet. The Gentle Hands continued forward, directly into the combat zone. Lieutenant Tsuji ignored orders to withdraw. She navigated through debris fields and weapons fire. She took minor damage but maintained course. She then broadcast a message on all frequencies. Both Coalition and Carthax. Vexrel played the audio file. A machine changed a calm female voice into words everyone understood. This is Lieutenant Tsuji of the Coalition Medical Corps. I am entering Helion 3 atmosphere to provide medical assistance to wounded personnel. Both Coalition and Carthax casualties will be treated without discrimination. I am unarmed and protected under the Galactic Conventions. Any attack on this vessel will be recorded and submitted as evidence of war crimes. The Carthax response was predictable. They opened fire. The picture showed weapons impacts against the medical frigate's shields. I repeat, I'm a medical vessel. I will land and begin treating wounded. Fire on me if you wish, but know that I will not stop coming. Vexrel's voice carried a note of something like awe. She landed the Gentle Hands in the middle of an active combat zone. She sat down between Carthax positions and a coalition forward base. Her shields were at 11%. Hull integrity was compromised in 3 sections. A rational being would have withdrawn. Lieutenant Tsuji deployed her medical teams. The picture showed footage from helmet cameras, humans in medical gear moving through smoke and explosions. They carried stretchers. Her personnel began recovering wounded from both sides. They pulled a Carthax warrior from a burning vehicle, while under fire from that warrior's own comrades. They stabilized a silicate soldier who had lost 3 limbs. They performed emergency surgery in a temporary tent while artillery shells impacted 50 meters away. A student spoke up. It was a young Carthax who had joined the coalition after the war. Sir, my people would have seen this as weakness, an opportunity to capture valuable hostages. They tried, Vexrel confirmed. A Carthax squad approached the medical camp. Lieutenant Suji walked out to meet them, unarmed, covered in blood from her surgical work. He played another audio file. You can kill me. You can kill my staff. But ask yourselves this. How many of your wounded will die because you destroyed the only medical facility within 100 kilometers? Your own warriors are bleeding out in bunkers because you refuse to let us help them. Is your pride worth their lives? The Carthax squad leader raised his weapon, and then one of his own warriors, wounded in an earlier engagement, crawled forward. He grabbed the squad leader's leg. This warrior had been treated by human medics an hour earlier. He begged his commander not to fire. Vexrel paused, letting the image sink in. The squad leader withdrew. Word spread through Carthax lines that the human medics would treat anyone, enemy or ally. Over the next 3 days, 17 Carthax warriors secretly brought their wounded to Lieutenant Suji's camp. She treated them all, then released them. The picture showed medical records, patient after patient. Coalition Command was furious. They accused her of aiding the enemy, of betraying military objectives. She was ordered to cease treating Carthax casualties. She refused. A formal court-martial was initiated, and then something unprecedented happened. Vexrel showed a communication log. A message arrived from Carthax High Command. It was addressed to Lieutenant Suji personally. It read, "Your actions violate all principles of warfare we understand. You show mercy to those who would kill you. You heal those who are your enemies. This is alien to us, but our warriors speak of you with reverence. They call you the one who sees no sides. We request negotiation for prisoner exchange and wounded recovery. We will guarantee safety of medical personnel on both sides." The room fell silent. This was the first time in Carthax history they had ever requested negotiation rather than demanding surrender. Lieutenant Suji's mercy had accomplished what coalition military force could not. It made the Carthax question their own doctrine. Vexrel changed the picture to show a peace treaty signing. The Helian conflict ended not with a decisive battle, but with a ceasefire. It was negotiated largely through medical exchange channels that Lieutenant Suji had established. The Carthax withdrew from Helion 3 and returned all prisoners. They did not join the coalition, but they stopped their expansion campaigns. They opened diplomatic channels. He showed the final image. Lieutenant Suji receiving multiple medals. She looked uncomfortable with the attention. When asked why she risked everything to treat enemy wounded, she said something I have struggled to understand for years. She said, "They stopped being the enemy when they became my patients. I am a doctor. I heal people. It is not complicated." Vexrel turned to face his students directly. But it is complicated, because humans have this capacity to separate their personal identity from tribal allegiance when they choose to. Lieutenant Suji was not betraying her side. She was operating on a principle she considered more important than sides, and that principle, that mercy, that refusal to dehumanize it, was more powerful than any weapon. He gestured to the Carthax student. "Your people now have treaties with the coalition. You are sitting in this academy, training alongside species you once conquered, all because one human refused to let wounded soldiers die, even when those soldiers were her enemies." The commander turned off the picture. This is why human mercy is terrifying. Not because it is weakness, it is not. It is because it challenges the fundamental assumptions of warfare. When you fight humans, you expect ferocity. You prepare for their tenacity. But how do you prepare for an enemy who sees you as a person even while you are trying to kill them? How do you maintain hatred for a species that will die to save your wounded? How do you justify conquest when they offer you dignity even in defeat? Vexrel's breathing holes flared with agitation. The answer is you cannot. That is why Carthax doctrine changed. That is why species across the coalition began adopting similar medical protocols. That is why in the 17 years since the Helion conflict, combat mortality rates have dropped by 34% for all coalition members. He looked at each student. When you fight alongside humans, you will see their courage and their fury, but pay attention to their mercy as well. Because that mercy is not weakness. It is a weapon that defeats enemies by turning them into something else entirely. It turns them into people who question why they are fighting in the first place. The lecture ended. As the students left, Vexrel noticed many of them stopping to speak with human students. Asking questions, seeking understanding. The commander allowed himself a rare expression of satisfaction. They were beginning to comprehend the complexity of humanity, not just as warriors, but as beings who could be simultaneously the most fierce and most compassionate species in the galaxy, And perhaps understanding that paradox was the most important lesson of all. Commander Vexeral stood before his students for the final lesson. The semester had changed them completely. The arrogant young warriors who entered his class were now thoughtful soldiers. They were students of not just tactics, but of the deeper truths of warfare and sacrifice. "This is our last session," he began. "Today I will not tell you about a single battle or a specific human.
Today I will tell you why these stories matter.
Why understanding human warfare is essential, not just for military success, but for the future of the coalition itself." A picture appeared showing the current political map of coalition space. 40 years ago, when humanity joined the coalition, many species were skeptical. Humans came from a single planet. They had no faster-than-light technology of their own. They had spent 10,000 years fighting each other over resources, territory, and ideology. Why would such a species be valuable to a peaceful alliance? Vexeral changed the picture, highlighting conflict zones. The answer became clear during the Vrex incursion, the Kurlax rebellion, the Carthax expansion, and dozens of smaller conflicts. Humans did not just fight. They changed how we understood warfare itself. They introduced concepts we had never considered. He showed a tactical manual. Before humans, coalition military doctrine was based on logical optimization. Maximum force, minimal casualties, efficient resource allocation. Wars were mathematical problems to be solved. Then humans arrived with their concepts of morale, fighting spirit, and tactical initiative. They taught us that warfare is not just calculation. It is psychology, will, and the refusal to accept predetermined outcomes. The picture changed to show training exercises. Within 10 years, every coalition military academy had integrated human tactical doctrine into their curriculum. Not because human weapons were superior. They were not. Not because human ships were faster. They were not. But because human warriors demonstrated that the will to fight could overcome material disadvantage. A student raised an appendage. "Sir, are you suggesting that human psychology is their greatest weapon?" "I am not suggesting it," Vexeral replied. "I am stating it as fact. Let me give you an example from current events." He showed recent reports from the frontier. 3 months ago, a coalition survey ship discovered a new spacefaring species in Sector 447. Initial contact protocols were followed. Everything seemed routine. Then our diplomats learned this species, they call themselves the Nexari, had been observing the coalition for years. They were studying our military capabilities. The picture showed Nexari ship designs, sleek, heavily armed vessels. The Nexari planned to invade. Their fleet outnumbered ours in that sector by 3-1. Their weapons technology was comparable to ours. By every logical calculation, they should have attacked. They had the advantage. Vexeral paused dramatically. They did not. Instead, their war leader requested a diplomatic meeting. When our ambassador asked why they chose negotiation over invasion, the Nexari war leader said, and I am quoting the translation, "We studied your conflicts. We studied the species in your coalition, but then we studied the humans. We watched recordings of their battles. We read their tactical manuals. We analyzed their psychological profiles." The commander's mouth parts clicked with something that might have been amusement, and we decided, the Nexari continued, that any alliance that includes humans is not worth fighting. Because humans do not surrender. They do not calculate acceptable losses and withdraw. They turn every battle into a nightmare for their enemies even when they lose. We have no desire to test ourselves against a species that considers death an acceptable outcome, if it means causing us harm. The room erupted in excited chatter. Vexeral waited for silence. The Nexari joined the coalition as provisional members 2 weeks ago. Not because we defeated them. Not because we intimidated them. But because humanity's reputation convinced them that cooperation was preferable to conflict. He changed the picture to show human personnel statistics. Humans now serve in every branch of coalition military and civilian services. They make up less than 3% of the coalition's total population. But they comprise 18% of frontline military personnel and 23% of special operations forces. These are not conscripts. These are volunteers who choose to serve. Vexeral showed personnel files, faces scrolling past. Corporal Tay from my first story recovered from his injuries. He now trains coalition special forces in close quarters combat. Private Minji left military service and became an engineer. She designs defensive systems that have saved countless lives. Corporal Junho retired after 15 years of service. He now teaches persistence hunting techniques to ecological survey teams. He paused on one image. Lieutenant Tsuji. Lieutenant Tsuji serves as Coalition Medical Command's Director of Emergency Response. Her protocols are now standard across all Coalition medical services. She has saved more lives in administration than she ever could have in the field. The commander turned off the files and faced his students directly. But this is not just about individual humans. It is about what they teach us. Every species in the Coalition has changed because of human influence. He gestured to a Karthak student. The Karthaks now train their warriors in medical response as well as combat. They learned from Lieutenant Tsuji that strength includes the ability to heal. He nodded to a Vrex representative present as an observer. The Virex Queen Mines now incorporate unpredictability variables into their tactical matrices. They learned from Captain Hyun that rigid logic can be defeated by creative chaos. He looked at the students. And species like mine, the Zalathi, who valued patient observation and careful planning, learned from all of these humans that knowledge without action is meaningless. We must be willing to commit, to risk, to sacrifice, and he showed a final picture, a memorial wall listing thousands of names. These are Coalition personnel who have died in service over the past 40 years. 17% are human. That is a disproportionate number for such a small population percentage. Humans die protecting species they met only years ago. They sacrifice themselves for causes that are not originally theirs. Why? I have asked many humans this question over the years. The answers vary, but they all center on a concept that is difficult for many species to grasp. Humans believe that some principles are worth dying for even if following those principles is logically suboptimal. Vexral turned to face the memorial. Freedom, justice, protection of the innocent, defense of the weak. These are not just words to humans. They are absolutes that override survival instinct, and that makes them both the most dangerous and the most valuable allies in the galaxy. He faced his students one final time. You have heard stories of human warfare. You have learned about their ferocity, their patience, their mercy. But the final lesson is this. Humans fight not because they love war, but because they love what they are fighting for. That distinction matters. A species that fights for territory can be bargained with. Offer them other territory. A species that fights for resources can be negotiated with. Share the resources. But a species that fights for principles? They cannot be bought. They cannot be reasoned with through material offerings. They cannot be deterred by casualties. They can only be convinced that you share their principles or that fighting them will cost more than any possible victory is worth. Vexeral turned off the picture. You're about to graduate from this academy. Some of you will serve alongside humans. Some may never encounter them in your careers. But all of you will live in a galaxy that humans have changed. They arrived as explorers and traders, and they taught us to be warriors. Not for conquest, but for protection. They showed us that being civilized does not mean being weak, that mercy and ferocity can coexist, that the true measure of a warrior is not in how efficiently they kill, but in what they are willing to die protecting. The commander stood at attention, a gesture of respect he rarely showed. In human military tradition, there is a phrase they use to honor fallen warriors. We remember. It is simple but profound. It means that sacrifice is not meaningless if those who remain carry forward the values that sacrifice defended. So I ask you, remember these stories. Remember Corporal Tae's fury. Remember Captain Hyun's sacrifice. Remember Corporal Junho's patience. Remember Lieutenant Tsuji's mercy, not because they are human, but because they exemplify what all of us should aspire to. The courage to stand when standing seems impossible, the wisdom to show mercy even to enemies, and the dedication to principles that transcend individual survival. Vexral's breathing holes flared with emotion. The most terrifying stories of human warfare are not terrifying because humans are monsters. They are terrifying because humans are mirrors. Mirrors that show us what we could be if we were willing to sacrifice as they do, to persist as they do, to believe as they do that some things are worth any cost. You may never face human weapons in combat, but you will face the legacy of human warfare every day. A coalition that is stronger because humans taught us that strength is not just about force. It is about conviction. The lecture ended, but this time Vexeral did not dismiss his students immediately. Instead, he stood with them in silence, all of them contemplating the weight of what they had learned.